Welcome to Corporate Finance Explained, where we break down the essential topics every corporate finance professional needs to know. This series is narrated by AI, created using CFI's expert training materials, and designed to help you stay ahead in the world of finance. Enjoy this week's deep dive.
Okay, so you're a mid-career corporate finance pro, right? You're deep in FP&A, maybe navigating corporate development, shaping strategic finance, managing treasury, or partnering with the business. Somewhere in that world,
You got it.
you've got, let's say, 3 to 10 years
Yeah.
in the trenches. You speak the language of numbers fluently,
Uh-huh.
and now you are looking to really amplify your impact.
For sure.
And that's precisely what this deep dive is all about, financial storytelling.
Exactly.
Our mission to equip you with the insights you need to translate your sharp analysis into tangible action and make you a more strategic force. And frankly, boost your visibility within your organization.
Absolutely. And, for someone at your career stage, just presenting the data,
Right.
it's just not enough anymore. The expectation is that you'll craft compelling narratives that actually drive decisions. So think of this as a focused exploration into mastering financial storytelling.
Okay.
Why is it a non-negotiable skill for your continued growth?
Yeah.
How do you structure those stories for maximum impact? We'll dissect some illuminating real-world examples.
Love it.
How do you navigate the art of presenting these sometimes complex financials to your non-finance colleagues?
Yeah, for sure.
And then we'll highlight visual strategies that truly resonate.
I like it. Okay, so let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Why does this matter so much for you? You've probably felt it, that the role of finance, it's evolving.
Oh, yeah.
It's no longer just about reporting on what happened historically. It's about being a strategic advisor, connecting the dots, guiding the business forward.
Absolutely.
And that requires more than just spreadsheets. It demands a narrative that sticks.
100%. And, your ability to influence, to truly move the needle, hinges on how effectively you communicate your financial insights.
Yeah.
It's about taking that complex world of numbers and making it accessible.
Right.
Making it relevant
Uh-huh.
and ultimately persuasive so that the decisions that need to be made are the right ones.
Yeah.
Financial storytelling is that bridge
Yeah.
between your rigorous analysis and impactful action.
Okay, so for our listeners, as they are preparing their next presentation or report, how do they even begin to shape these narratives so that their insights not only land, but actually lead to the right strategic moves? What's a foundational approach we can take?
Okay, so a really effective starting point, I think, is the headline first approach.
Okay.
Think about how you consume information. You want the key takeaway up front.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Same principle applies here.
Okay.
Don't bury your most critical financial insight.
Okay.
Lead with it.
Uh-huh.
State your core message clearly and concisely right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then and only then do you layer in your supporting data and analysis.
That makes a lot of sense. And you're right, we are all so busy all the time.
For sure.
You're interacting with busy executives who are constantly bombarded with information.
Uh-huh.
So getting straight to that crucial insight probably cuts through the noise,
It does.
commands attention immediately.
Absolutely. It shows respect for their time
Uh-huh.
and immediately directs their focus to what's most important.
Yeah.
Plus, it forces you, the communicator, to be laser clear on what your central message really is.
I like that.
But the real power comes not just from stating the finding,
Right.
but from clearly articulating its implications for the business.
Okay, that's a really critical distinction.
Yeah.
Walk us through what that looks like in practice. What's the difference between simply stating a financial finding and really driving home its implications?
Okay, so let's say you've identified that operating expenses increased by 7% this quarter.
Okay.
That's just a factual statement, right?
Yeah.
It describes what happened, but the implication, the story, is what that means for the business's trajectory. So instead of just presenting that data point, you could say the 7% increase in operating expenses in our North American division is now putting significant pressure on our stated margin targets, necessitating a closer look at our cost drivers in that region and the potential need for strategic adjustments. You see how that shifts the focus from a mere observation to a call for understanding and potential action.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's about taking that raw data and not just presenting it, but translating it into something that has direct relevance to the company's strategic objectives,
You got it.
future performance.
Exactly.
So to make this even more tangible, let's explore how some leading companies have mastered this art of financial storytelling. You mentioned Netflix earlier. What can we learn from their approach?
Yeah, Netflix offers a powerful case study, particularly when you analyze their strategic evolution. For a long time, their core narrative was all about explosive subscriber growth,
Right.
that relentless acquisition of new users. But as the streaming market matured, that story had to adapt.
Uh-huh.
Their financial storytelling needed to pivot to emphasize profitability and long-term sustainability for their investors.
Right, and that transition was evident in their communications.
Hmm.
The focus seemed to shift from just the headline subscriber numbers to metrics like average revenue per user, or ARPU, and the generation of healthy free cash flow.
Exactly. Their financial storytelling strategically evolved to highlight margin improvement,
Right.
ARPU growth, and consistent free cash flow generation. Their investor presentations and earnings calls started prominently featuring these metrics, effectively telling a new story.
Yeah.
We're not just expanding our reach, we're building a highly profitable and sustainable entertainment business.
Yeah.
This deliberate reframing was crucial in resetting market expectations and aligning internal efforts around financial efficiency and long-term value creation.
That's a valuable insight as our listeners' own companies evolve. What about Adobe? They underwent a significant transformation as well, moving to a subscription-based model. Yeah. How did they communicate that shift financially?
That's a good one. Adobe's transition from selling perpetual software licenses to a subscription-based software as a service, or SaaS model, presented a major storytelling challenge.
Right.
This wasn't just a change in how they delivered their products. It fundamentally altered their revenue recognition patterns and their
Right.
key performance indicators.
Yeah, absolutely. Suddenly, those large upfront license fees are replaced with more consistent but smaller recurring monthly or annual subscriptions.
Yeah.
That's a big shift in how investors and stakeholders perceive the business's financial health and growth potential.
Absolutely. And their financial storytelling strategically focused on metrics like recurring revenue growth, specifically their annual recurring revenue, or ARR,
Right.
customer lifetime value,
Yeah.
and customer churn reduction.
Yep.
By consistently highlighting these KPIs in their communications, they were able to clearly demonstrate the long-term benefits of the SaaS model to investors
Yeah.
and other stakeholders. The core of their story became building a stable, predictable, and ultimately more valuable revenue stream over time.
And for our listeners, ARR, as we mentioned earlier, is annual recurring revenue. It's a critical metric, especially for SaaS businesses, as it provides a clear and predictable view of future revenue streams and growth momentum. Now let's look at Microsoft. They're often cited for their strong and clear communication, particularly around their rapidly growing cloud business, Azure. What can we learn from their financial storytelling approach?
Well, Microsoft really excels at using the power of data visualization to reinforce their strategic narratives. Their finance team frequently incorporates dashboards and compelling visuals
Right.
in their earnings calls and investor materials.
Yeah.
And these visuals clearly illustrate the significant contributions of different segments like Azure and Office 365
Okay.
to their overall profit margins and their overarching cloud strategy.
Yeah.
These visuals aren't just pretty charts, they directly support
Right.
and strengthen their business transformation story in a highly impactful and easily digestible way for their audience.
So for our listeners' presentations, it's not just about the raw numbers themselves, but how you visually present them to underscore the key messages about your company's strategic direction and performance drivers.
Exactly. Clean, thoughtfully designed visuals can often convey complex financial information far more effectively
Right.
and efficiently than pages of dense text and tables.
I like it. Think about Airbnb. They launched their IPO during a period of unprecedented uncertainty in the travel industry. How do they utilize financial storytelling to navigate that incredibly challenging environment and garner investor confidence?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Re-
Launching an IPO during a global pandemic when travel was severely restricted,
Yeah.
they must have had a very compelling
Right.
and carefully crafted story to tell to
Yeah.
potential investors.
For sure.
Airbnb's IPO roadshow storytelling centered on their inherent adaptability
Uh-huh.
and the underlying resilience of their unique business model.
Okay.
Even in the face of significant pandemic-related losses, they strategically highlighted their strong gross margins. And the early encouraging signs of recovery trends as travel began to cautiously resume. Their narrative was meticulously tailored to directly address investor concerns about the pandemic's impact while persuasively emphasizing their long-term growth potential as the travel industry rebounded.
Right.
They painted a picture of a company that could not only weather the storm but emerge even stronger.
Yeah.
on the other side.
It sounds like they consciously chose to emphasize the fundamental strengths of their business
For sure.
and the potential for a strong comeback rather than dwelling solely on the immediate negative impacts of the pandemic.
100%.
And finally, let's touch on Salesforce. What characterizes their approach to financial storytelling, particularly in the context of a mature SaaS business?
Well, Salesforce consistently and strategically links its core financial metrics like annual recurring revenue or ARR and customer retention rates directly to the creation of long-term shareholder value in all of their investor communications. Their financial storytelling emphasizes the strategic alignment of their business, how their various acquisitions and ongoing product development initiatives directly contribute to their overarching strategic vision. They also highlight the efficiency and integration success of their mergers and acquisitions activities, and clearly articulate their future growth potential in the evolving CRM landscape. They go far beyond simply reporting the quarterly numbers. They weave those results into a compelling narrative about their long-term strategic direction and value creation for their investors.
So across all of these diverse examples, the common thread seems to be this remarkable ability to weave the seemingly dry financial data into a much broader and more engaging narrative about the company's overarching strategy, the specific challenges they're facing, and their anticipated future prospects. It's clearly not just about reporting on past financial performance. It's about painting a vivid picture of where the company is headed and why investors and other stakeholders should believe in that vision.
For sure.
Now, a common challenge many of our listeners face is communicating these often complex financial insights, not just to fellow finance professionals, inventors or senior leaders, but also to their colleagues in other departments who may not possess the same deep financial background. How do we effectively tailor our financial storytelling for these non-financial stakeholders?
This is a really critical skill to maximize your impact across the organization. When you're presenting financial information to teams like marketing, product development, or operations, you must consciously shift your focus away from purely financial metrics and instead emphasize the direct impact those metrics have on their specific goals, objectives, and desired outcomes. You must always remember that their day-to-day priorities and performance indicators are likely very different from yours.
A marketing team, for example, is probably far more interested in metrics like campaign effectiveness, customer acquisition cost, and lead generation than in a detailed breakdown of general and administrative overhead expenses.
Exactly. So instead of presenting a slide that simply states, overall revenue is down by 5% this quarter, you might frame that same information for the marketing team in a way that directly resonates with their priorities, such as, the effectiveness of our key marketing campaigns is currently trailing our target by 5%, which may necessitate a strategic reallocation of our marketing spend to higher performing channels to ensure we meet our customer acquisition goals.
I like it.
You're still conveying the exact same underlying financial reality, but you're doing it in a language, in a context that is immediately relevant and actionable for the marketing team.
So it's fundamentally about speaking their language and consistently connecting the financial insights to what they as individual teams and contributors care about most deeply, whether that's improving customer satisfaction, streamlining operational efficiency, meeting critical product delivery timelines, or demonstrating a clear return on their specific investments.
Exactly. You should always proactively ask yourself, what are this particular team's key objectives and performance indicators? How does this financial information either help them achieve those objectives or highlight potential roadblocks and challenges they need to be aware of and address? By consistently framing your financial insights within that specific context, you effectively transform the finance function from what can sometimes be perceived as a back-office reporting entity into a true value-added strategic partner that directly contributes to their success.
I like that a lot. Okay, so we've talked about framing the narrative. We've talked about real-world examples of companies doing this well. Now let's discuss how we can make these compelling financial stories even more impactful and memorable. And that often involves the strategic use of visuals. I've always been a big believer that a well-designed and thoughtfully chosen chart or graph can often convey more information and do so far more effectively than pages and pages of raw numbers presented in tables.
100%.
So what are some of the visual best practices that our listeners should keep top of mind when crafting their financial narratives?
You're absolutely right. The strategic use of the right visual can be incredibly powerful
Yeah.
in your financial storytelling arsenal.
Yeah.
For instance, think about utilizing waterfall charts
Okay.
to clearly illustrate the cumulative impact of various positive and negative variances on a key metric.
Yeah.
Or consider employing variance bridge charts
Okay.
to effectively explain the specific factors that contributed to changes in performance between different reporting periods.
Right.
Trend lines are invaluable for visually demonstrating progress or decline over time. And concise KPI snapshot dashboards can quickly and clearly highlight the most critical key performance indicators at a glance.
Got it.
And just to reiterate, a variance bridge is a specific type of chart that helps break down
Yeah.
and visually represent the individual components
Okay.
that explain the net change in a financial metric
Yeah.
between two distinct points in time.
So it's not just about throwing in any chart. It's about carefully selecting the specific type of visual that best supports the particular message you're trying to convey
Absolutely.
and ensures maximum clarity
Yes.
for your audience.
Yeah.
But beyond just choosing the right type of chart, what are some overarching general principles of effective visual design that we should adhere to in our financial storytelling?
Okay. Well, above all else, simplicity is paramount.
Okay.
Each visual you create should aim to communicate a single, clear, and easily understandable message.
Right.
Resist the urge to clutter your charts with excessive data points
Yeah.
or unnecessary and distracting design elements. Utilize clear and concise labels
Okay.
and callouts to directly draw your audience's attention
Yeah.
to the most critical insights within the visual. And perhaps most importantly, maintain a consistent visual style and formatting across all of your visuals in terms of font choices, color palettes, and labeling conventions.
Right.
This consistency will significantly enhance the overall professionalism and ease of understanding for your audience.
That emphasis on consistency is key.
Absolutely.
It definitely contributes to a more polished
For sure.
and professional presentation.
Absolutely.
And it makes the information much easier for the audience to follow. Now, you mentioned some broader principles for effective visuals earlier. Can you
All right.
elaborate on those?
Yes. So CFI, the Corporate Finance Institute, outlines 4 fundamental principles
Okay.
for designing highly effective visuals.
Okay.
Relevance, clarity, consistency, and context. Relevance means ensuring that you only present data that directly and meaningfully supports your core message and avoids unnecessary information.
Right.
Clarity involves using clear and concise labels, logical formatting, and helpful annotations to guide your audience's attention
Okay.
and understanding. Consistency, as we've discussed, is crucial for a unified
Yeah.
and professional appearance.
Yeah.
And finally, context is absolutely vital. Always include relevant benchmarks, historical data targets, or prior period comparisons
Yeah.
to provide a necessary frame of reference for the performance data you are presenting and enable your audience to draw meaningful conclusions.
Those are incredibly helpful and actionable guidelines for our listeners to implement. It's clear that effective visual storytelling in finance is not just about creating aesthetically pleasing charts, it's about strategically using visuals to dramatically enhance understanding, reinforce your key messages, and ultimately drive informed action within your organization.
Yeah.
So as we begin to wrap up this deep dive into financial storytelling, what are the absolute key takeaways that you want our listeners to remember and be able to immediately apply in their roles?
Okay, so the most crucial thing for you to remember is that financial storytelling is not just a nice-to-have skill.
Yeah.
It is a fundamental strategic capability that will significantly enhance your professional impact
Right.
and accelerate your career growth within your organization.
Right.
Actively embrace the headline-first approach
Okay.
as a foundational method for structuring your narratives for maximum clarity and impact. Always make a conscious effort to deeply understand your audience and tailor your message accordingly,
Right.
especially when you are communicating with your non-financial colleagues, by focusing relentlessly on their specific goals, priorities, and performance indicators.
Yeah, I like that.
Remember that the visuals you use should always serve to simplify and clarify your story, never to complicate or obscure it. And finally, Any critical professional skill consistent practice is absolutely essential for mastery.
For sure.
Every presentation you deliver, every report you write,
Right.
every board deck you contribute to
Yeah.
represents a valuable opportunity for you to actively hone and refine your financial storytelling abilities.
When financial storytelling is done well, it transcends simply presenting numbers.
Sure.
It becomes a powerful catalyst for informed decision-making
Absolutely.
and transforms your valuable financial insights into real and lasting influence within your organization.
Exactly. It's about making that critical shift.
Yeah.
In your role, moving beyond simply being a reporter of historical financial data to becoming a highly valued and influential strategic communicator who shapes the future direction of the business.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful, I agree, and practical deep dive.
It has been.
And for our listeners, as you return to your spreadsheets, begin preparing for your next crucial presentation. Here's a final thought-provoking question to consider.
Okay.
Next time you're deeply engaged in prepping for a key meeting or crafting a vital board deck, take a deliberate step back and ask yourself, what compelling story is my data truly trying to tell?
Love it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Corporate Finance Explained. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to check out more episodes and explore CFI's highly rated courses at corporatefinanceinstitute.com. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into essential finance topics. See you next time.